Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Safiyyah Obileye, and I will be moderating today's session. As you're aware, today is the second edition of the Citadel Webinar Series and brought to you by B-K-O Citadel Limited. Thank you once again for joining us. My apologies, I know we are a few minutes behind time, but we will be getting into the session shortly. All right. So allow me to introduce our panelists for today. Our panelist is Mr. Olakunle Onayiga. He is the head of strategy and planning at Oando PLC, strategic thought partner to the leadership of the organization on present state and future direction of the business. And he is responsible for leading key strategic initiatives that aims at increasing shareholder value and maximizing returns sustainably. With 17 plus years of experience, he has led several business transformation and technology innovation initiatives and is also responsible for several successful reengineering of businesses. His wealth of experience covers business planning, project management, process engineering, and operations management, as well as change management. He holds an MBA and a bachelor's degree with a major in mathematics and has a passion for technology and building a sustainable environment. So, Mr. Olakunle Onayiga, thank you very much for joining us. We are very happy to have you.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Trust we're keeping safe. I guess this is going to be our new normal for a little while, where life as we know it changes into the somewhat virtual environment. But one of the things which I'm going to speak about today, I mean, whether or not we like it, we actually are going to get back into a place where we get back into the workplace, but we're built based on a diverse set of workforce. And one of the things that typically happens is that there's a lot of conflicts, there's a lot of lack of compatibility between colleagues, and our topic or our conversation today would be around building that environment where we can all thrive in across multi-generations.
Right. So we're happy to have you. Would you like to share your slides, or should I go ahead?
I'll put the slides up.
Okay, good. Apologies for the delay. Mr. Onayiga will be sharing his slides now.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Again, like I said earlier, key focus of what the conversation is today would be around thriving in a multi-generational workplace, and largely how to avoid conflict and create an enabling environment where multi-generations can collaborate. Today in the workforce, we find out that you have the age range of people anywhere between 22 to, depends on what organization you are, up to 65, 70 in some instances. And dealing with such people in those generations would create a bit of conflict depending on, again, culture, background, orientation, experience, etc. But I'll just do a quick poll to find out while that's coming up, I'll just go in. I'll create a scenario here. There's a young chap. His name is Afolabi Obi. Very enthusiastic and keen to get into the workforce. He's 22 years old. He's just joined a leading oil and gas company. A petrophysics physicist by training, graduated from Ibadan, an MBA graduate, Harvard. So he's gotten the best, and he's putting his best into becoming that person that you will say is an exemplary or model person that we all strive to achieve when we get out of school or get into a new workplace. And at the back of his mind, he's clear that he wants to come into this organization, create change. He has all the knowledge in his head, and he's ready to impress, right? One of the things that we find out that is that he's very ambitious, right? He's audacious, he's creative, and he's willing to impress his colleagues, right? He's ready to go all out. He believes he's an innovative thinker. But soon after he's into that environment, what you find out is that Folabi finds out that, look, work is actually tough. You know, this life I've just gotten into, it's not as I seemed or thought it would be, right? Nobody appreciates that eagerness that he brings to the table. Some of his colleagues are actually even wary of him. You know, they think, what does he have up his sleeves? What's he planning to do? And with all the ideas he brings to the table, you know, you find that a lot of people will say, oh, that's not how we do things around here. And gradually what happens to Folabi is that his energy dies off. He's no longer enthusiastic. He just becomes that person amongst the team that just does, you know, what he has to do. And at the end of the day, becomes a regular employee. What's the reason why that happens, right? The reality is that you have a diverse team. You have people who are 50 years old, has done things a particular way. Nobody's interested in your new ideas, or maybe their old ideas have worked for them over time, right? And the next slide will show us, let's just quickly take this poll. The next slide will show us the characteristics or the makeup of the different people in the organization and the reasons why we get some of the outcomes within the organization, or sort of way that Folabi feels after joining the workforce. On the call, I'm seeing that most people, I think in a few seconds, I'll just wait a few minutes and run the poll and let it finish. Okay. So right here today, we see that most people are within the age of 26 and 39, followed by age 40 to 55. And right after that are people within the ages of 18 to 25. And going forward, we'll see what that means for us in the workplace. I'll introduce to you the various generations that exist. The first generation are the silent generations. They are aged between 75 and 90. And typically, most people who are either not working, they have run businesses today and they hold their own businesses and have either not built a succession plan and are yet to relinquish that aspect of the work they've been carrying on for this time. The next generation are who we call the baby boomers. They came right after the end of the Second World War, the birth of industrialization. Then the next generation are the Gen Z, between age 40 to 55. Based on the poll, these are the second highest people in our workforce today. Then, of course, the next generation are the Gen Z, which largely are called the millennials, age 26 to 39. And of course, Generation Z follows after, 18 to 25, just starting their career at the beginning of career, just rounding up university. So you get them have jobs from uni into new hires, 1 to 2 years work experience. The core values that guide these people, for the silent generation, they have respect for authority. Largely, it's what the rank and file says, and they go through it. Compliance is the order of the day. Everything that they do will be followed by the letter. They are dutiful, studious. They're guys who, once they get into work mode, work is what it is. So they have to, you leave the work environment, and they are largely would follow custom and tradition. These are people who, this is how we've done it, and this is what the custom says. This is what's customary. This is what we'll follow. The baby boomers, largely optimistic set of people. Again, they see glasses always half full. They don't believe anything is impossible. They are workaholics. They want to build a new organization. They want to be able to take on the world. And they are motivated by a lot of stimulation, right? So depending on what happens in the external environment, they're ready to take on what the new challenge brings for them. What's the new opportunity that comes, and all that. Whilst the Generation X also, largely stimulated by their environment, but they are self-reliant. Again, they are self-starters. They are ready to run on their own. But they are very skeptical of people around them, people of their work styles, people, and the way their environment functions around them. So they're a bit wary, they're skeptical, they're not necessarily open into being influenced by what other people have to do or say to them. The Generation Ys, they are the realists. They are people who see and say as it is. They are largely goal focused. You give them a task on what to do, what to follow, they'll run with it. They're purposeful. They tell you, oh, this is what I want to be in 5 or 10 years in the organization. I hope to be the C-suite, and they work towards it. They'll do anything that they need to do to achieve that. Whilst the Generation Z, they are rather unique individuals. They are guys who are driven by authenticity, right? What they'll say to you is, I want to do my own thing and I want to do it my own way. They're around creativity. They have a rather creative mind. You see that within this set of teams or groups of people, they would already have or have managed their business of their own, or currently run 2 or 3 businesses. Shareability, information shares is something which they don't hold. Everything that happens to them, they put it out there. Social media is where they put their progress. As they hit a new milestone, they're happy to celebrate, put it out there, and let people know. I'll go into work ethics. One of the things that for the very first set, again, the silent generation, they're a very disciplined set of people. Once it's time to work, they will stay at work. If it's 9 to 5, they will be there by 9 and they will leave at 5. Nothing disrupts them. They're hard workers, they're loyal, and they'll stay to the cause, no matter what it is. Even if the ship sinks, they're ready to go down, in that way. While the baby boomers, right, they because of the era which they came from, which is post Second World War, they like to question authority. They want to know why. They are largely self-centered. A lot of them are about what it is that I stand to gain. What is it that this is going to bring forward for me, than the bigger picture. They are crusade causers. These are the guys who started and put in place unionism, so that what happens to me or the organization cannot just do what they want to do. It's about me and crusade. They one for all, one for all. And that you see in that era, you find a lot of unions and all of that. Generation X are task oriented. So they will take on tasks and go and do them well. And once they are done with that cycle, they need another set of tasks to put them in balance. The next part of them that describes them is that they're also largely autonomous. So they do not want to be micromanaged. They want to manage on their own, be managed by themselves. And they birthed what work-life balance is today, because coming from an era where people just work, they thought there's a point where I need to balance life and work. So they led the crusade of work-life balance today, as we know it. Generation Y, you call them the multitaskers. They are people who are able to, or typically would do multiple things at the time. They would, while working, get into, checking their mails or social media or what's happening out there in the world, and come back to work and, just blend a lot of things. They'll blend business, they'll blend work and a business, they'll blend work and some consulting on the outside. And they are largely eager people. For them, it's what next, right? They get into a task or get into a role, within 2 years, they become bored and they're ready to move on. So you would always hear from them, what's the next thing I need to do? What's the next thing I need to conquer? Whilst the Generation Z are largely flexible. They want to be able to work 3 days a week, right? Their personal freedom is more important to them than anything else, even than the money, than the cash. You see them largely self-reliant. If you get into an organization where they do not like the things that they see, within a couple of weeks, they make up their mind and say, I don't want to do this, and they drop whatever it is and move on, even if it means that they would be hungry for a while. If I get into the communication preference of each of these generations, the silent generation typically are very formal. It is, hello, sir, good afternoon, sir. Their documentation are written, and it will follow proper English with the dates, address, dates on your right, address on the left, dear sir, and they will do everything, very formally. The baby boomers are one-on-one type guys. They would walk down the corridor to your office, engage with you, or do a phone call. They want that personal interconnect between whoever it is they communicate with. Generation X, these are people who largely came into the email age, right? So they are direct. They don't write lengthy emails or letters. What they'll do is go straight to the point. Dear friend, we have, a problem at hand. See me in my office. Let's discuss. They would take away the preamble. They're not interested. send you emails, text message if required. And what typically happens is that they kind of kick engagement into a very short, tight timeline. Generation Y, you will hear them more about social media. They will communicate with you on any platform possible, okay? I'm happy to send you a work feedback via text, email, WhatsApp, whatever it is that I find easiest to communicate with you, maybe an email. But for them, it is any medium possible that I can pass my message across, I will. Generation Z, they call them the digital natives. Everything they do or they have is largely on a device. So you'll see them, they use books less, they take their notes on devices, they take notes on their phones. Their handheld device has become the only one point which they do everything. These are the generations where you see them head down no matter what. You get into a room, they hardly greet, they would chat with everybody in the room and communicate. Feedback preference of the different generations is, for those in the silent gen, no news is good news. So you don't tell me nothing, I think I'm doing very well. They like the pat on the back. So if they're doing very well, you tell them that they've done a great job. It makes them happy, it motivates them to do more, right? Baby boomers really don't care. Let's get the job done. At all costs, work must happen, right? Generation X, they like direct feedback. Tell me what it is. When I do what it is, I'll take the feedback. It really doesn't matter. There's almost little or no emotion in between what that feedback means. I want to better myself. I need the feedback to actually better myself. They'll take it. Generation Y, they require a lot of feedback, right? They want you to tell them everything as they go on, and they want it instantaneous. They want you to tell them when they have done well at work, as many times as required, and they also want you to, you know, tell them when they've gone wrong, and they want it immediately, right? For Generation Z, they take feedback in bite sizes, and what typically is that if you give them a lot of the feedback at once, they might not be able to process it. But one thing they do want is that they want real-time engagement. They want that immediate feedback, but in small portions. Don't tell me how well I've done and how bad I've done in the same time, because in most cases, they will focus on one of the, maybe what is bad and how that has, that then bruises their emotion, and they fail to see that, oh, I did a great job just yesterday. But they want it real time. So tell me when I'm doing what I'm doing, right? Real time, but in small chunks, right? They don't want all the emotions to be served to them at once. And a lot of stereotypes that we have for the various generations, we say the silent generations are old-fashioned, right? They are all about, they just follow the rules. They don't bend from what we know the norm is. The baby boomers are highly ambitious, largely optimistic, and typically wealthy. You see, those are the guys who are most of the owners of Fortune 500 companies today. The Generation X are self-centered risk takers. They're ready to put in all the cash they make into a business once they believe in it, and they're largely cynical. They don't trust people. Generation Y, they're job hoppers. These are guys who, in a space of 10 years of their career, may have done 10 jobs or 20 jobs. They're largely dependent on technology, to get work done. So they need tools. They don't hold on to the basic. You see them, these are the people who use a lot of tools online to help them do what would have taken them, they manually would have done before. And they work to live. These guys are people who, at the end of a period or an earning or whatever it is, they will take all the cash they've made and they're ready to go on holiday and spend every dime and come back and start again. Generation Z, they are constantly connected. They're online. They're in groups with their friends, right? People say they're largely distracted, they're multitaskers, and they're apathetic. In the US today, studies shows that the workforce today is currently made up of Generation Z, Generation X, right? Closely followed by Generation Y, and of course, all the others are, minorities. So you hardly have the silent generation, and the baby boomers are largely phasing out. And while Generation Z are actually the people who are starting to fill the workforce. Now, what does this mean when we have a multi-generational workforce? The reality is we can learn from each other, right? People from various generations have one experience, they have different learnings, they have different orientations on how to deal and manage with tasks, solutions, problems. A geologist who has 25 years work experience would know the best way to do that, but a guy who has just come out of university and has the new tools would find or knows the best way to which to put these solutions to deliver tasks and goals in a more efficient manner than you knew 20 years ago, right? But one of the big risks that we face is cohesion between the different teams, right? You see a man who is 40 years old or 50 years old is in a room with a boy who is 22. And depending on the organization, when he says to him, sorry, you have to go and do that stuff, if he's in a place of authority, for example, the younger person, right? It can lead to conflict. It can lead to misunderstanding. You find then culture and tradition can rear its head, and it says, you can't talk to me that way. Do you know how old I am? Do you know how long I've been here, right? And all of these, once we fail to understand the different values that each generation holds and guides, in their different styles, their preferences, their environments, how those, factors have formed them, it can obviously create frictions within the different generations. So over the next few seconds, a few minutes, I'll take us through a few steps which we need to look at to avoid frictions between us, various generations. The first thing we need to do is establish respect, right? That I'm 10 years old or I'm 20 years old in the workplace does not mean I should be spoken to badly. Everybody deserves their respect, right? As individuals, whatever it is, in wherever we find ourselves, I want to be respected, and I want to be treated right and properly. So older generations will typically put forward seniority and experience, right? And that's fine. But one of the things we need to understand is that the guys from the younger generations, they have something to offer, right? They bring forward their experience, they bring forward their new learning, they bring forward some innovation, right? So let's learn to respect wherever it is we're coming from. There are different things which have guided us. I've gone to school, I've gotten some learning. Listen to me at the minimum, right? If you find out that what I have to then say doesn't make sense, then you can provide the guidance and clarity and all of those stuff. Second thing we need to do is that we need to be flexible and accommodating. Everybody has something to offer. If we understand the different generations and what makes them tick, what their preferences are, what their needs are, then we can understand, we can see that, oh, there's the reason why this person behaves this way, and that is why they need certain things. So you'll find out that the Generation Z folks and Generation Y largely are about their time. Their time means a lot more to them. So they are happy to work 3 days a week and take 2 days off and have a 4-day weekend, right? However, with a Generation X person, he does not understand why you cannot work for 40 hours a week, right? So we need to understand what the things that are unique from the various generations and why and how it influences them. But one thing that needs to be emphasized is that practicality in that environment where you find yourself is key. So yes, you may want a job and want to be, have a flexible work schedule that you only want to work 2 days a week or 3 days a week. If your environment that you find yourself does not support a 2-day-a-week work style, then you cannot actually get it. So you can't demand it that way, right? But again, if you find yourself in that environment and you're willing to work with it, and the environment actually is able to provide you that offering, then it's a conversation. It's a conversation where you say, okay, this is my preference. How does it work for you? This is what I hope to achieve. And of course, if a middle ground can be found, then that will then be achieved. One thing which we need to do, which a lot of us are guilty of, is that we need to stop stereotyping. Not everything that we see, right, is reality. If you are a baby boomer, for some of us who are baby boomers, we think that the millennials are sports, tech obsessed, and they lack people skills because they don't engage. But that's not true, right? A lot of people know what to do, and yes, because the larger orient of what the different people do and offer does not mean everybody is that way. Let's break our stereotype and engage people based on their merits. One of the things you have to remember is that if you stereotype somebody and have a stereotype about a generation or a group of people, there's a strong likelihood that you also have been stereotyped, either by a generation ahead of you or a generation behind you. So if we have an open mind and take people based on their merits, then it's easier to share knowledge. It's easier to share new ideas, new suggestions, and engagement is easier. The next thing is that we should learn from each other. Right? Multi-generations should first identify the different people's skills, what it is their values are, what they bring to the table, and let's build on each other's skills, experiences. Only when you do that is when we can then build a cohesive workforce, right? And something that we need to always look at is do a lot of reverse mentoring, right? So a generation who has a superior or better engagement of something. So the younger generation, for example, have learned or have found tools that make their job easier. The tools and algorithms or solutions out there that make tools easier. Be ready to teach your managers or your superiors, right? And vice versa. People who have built experience over time would say, look, the only reason why I'm the expert in the room is because I've done this several times. I've burnt myself or I've gotten this experience from numerous engagements. And this is why we go down this route, right? And that creates an environment that fosters cohesion. The next thing is communication. One size does not fit all. We cannot just say, oh, I'm the guy who sends emails and emails always work. There are a lot of people who get emails from certain people and all they just do is shift delete, because by the time you go through reading it, you sometimes do not understand what has been written. It's very lengthy. Or in other instances, when you get a message or get communication from somebody, it doesn't even contain any information, right? Some generations are used to emails and text. Others use social media or collaborative tools. Some people would rather work on Slack or Teams, And even when we send messages or send emails, the younger generations today will send sentences in acronyms and emojis and you as an alphabet instead of YOU in a formal email, right? Whilst we should still always stick to formal communication when we have to communicate externally or whatever it is. Depending on whatever environment you find yourself, you may not be able to get away with it, right? So key thing, tailor your communication style with whoever you're engaging. If you find out that your audience or who you need to engage with is a telephone person or is a more people-oriented person, then you walk into his office, oh, I would like to have a conversation with you on X, Y, and Z. Speak to them about the issue, and you can recap and send what it is you said via email such that that communication happens. For some people, it's okay to just pick up the phone and speak to them, and they don't want anything else. By the time you come into the office, you might be distracting, or you might be, divide their attention. So key thing you do is tailor your communication style to who your audience is. So you have to do a bit of study. Who am I talking to? How would they rather be engaged, right? And we engage them in that style. And the last point, which I'd like to make, is that let's not dwell on the differences. Let's not overlook the similarities between the various generations, right? There are certain things that are more common amongst us in all generations, than the differences in most cases. Okay, so some of us want to be fulfilled. Some of us want to be successful. A lot of us like to play, right? And you see, which is where you see, once you see team bonding experience activities in organizations, you find out that everybody participates and are happy, right? So let's find what works, or what are the things that unite us as colleagues across the generations. It doesn't matter. So the idea is that for us, we should constantly always look for the similarities, focus on the similarities between multi-generations, build on it, and find more ways to reduce the differences. So if we're able to share learnings, share work styles, provide perspective into why certain these multi-generations would go away. That's my last point, and I think we can take questions. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, sir. We already have a question waiting. Though I feel like you made a point about this in the presentation already, but let's go ahead with it. So Mokbe Oyetunji says, do you think it's a cultural thing not to be able to call out or correct a colleague when he or she is wrong, despite the age difference, despite the age? For example, a 22-year-old would have to think twice before correcting a 45-year-old. So what do you think, sir?
So again, I think one of the things that we need to, largely there's nothing wrong in calling out. I think the wise thing to do is, again, depends on the organization. The wise thing to do would be either to correct them in a place where they can take it. So maybe you go into their room and say, oh, as regards to that meeting, I didn't think you needed to have spoken to that person that way. X, Y, and Z, I think you need to treat that person with a little more respect. And what typically would happen over time is that if I see you as a younger person, first thing you've done is that you've respected me by not calling me out in the open, for example, and you've come into my office to address something that exists. And where something has become a systemic bad behavior, then it's okay to call out in the open once in a while, such that, and if you're somebody who is in a place of leadership, for example, then you might be able to need to actually do some immediate correction so that you do not have a systemic bad habit where bad behavior is encouraged and say, oh, because the guy is older, you don't want to call him out. Calling out is actually good and required, but again, like I said, it's best to follow wisdom and look at the situation, right? If best to actually call aside and let them know that this method or this is not actually a good thing to do, and you can try and correct.
Thank you, sir. So I understand you saying that you can call out a senior colleague. However, it's better to do it in private and with some discretion. Okay, so we have another question from an anonymous attendee who says, why do employees find it difficult to discuss issues with their employer, even when it is obvious that the boss is wrong?
So again, I think it's again about the culture and DNA of the organization, where you create a culture where candor is welcome, then you find out it's easy actually to have that engagement. Again, I'll go back to the first point which I made. Everything you do in engaging comes with respect. At the end of the day, I want to be respected at first as an individual. And once we have that at the back of our mind, I'm not asking you to not do anything or not do your job. The key thing is first see me as an individual, first see me as a human being. And as a human being that requires respect, the best thing or the right thing to do is engage me with respect, right? And once that organization is able to build that culture around respect and managing people's emotions rights, right? Then you find out that you can actually grow an organization where the boss can actually be called out.
Great. I think that takes care of that. So someone says, how can we encourage reverse mentoring? Interesting.
It's a leadership call. It's something that has to be managed or pushed down from the top, but it's also something that can be influenced from the bottom. Look, at the end of the day, one of the things that nothing stops a more junior member of the team from meeting the rest of his peers or his colleagues to say, I'm interested. I learned this new thing over the weekend. I'd like to share with you guys. And you set aside 20 minutes, 30 minutes to share your learning. Once that environment is such that you are largely able to see learning first rather than who is delivering the learning, then it can actually become an environment where reverse mentoring can take place. That way, you see that, look, it's actually not a bad thing to reach out to this junior member of the team to teach me something or to take something away from.
Right, thank you. So, Kudus Idris says, how does one bridge generational gap in an organization? For example, if you have a senior colleague who always wants to document, printed documents, increases stationery cost, as against soft copy exchange, which is faster and more and cost effective. How does one manage this interface?
So again, let's look at orients of the different generations. So you'll find out that people from generation X are a bit more comfortable with tech, right?
Right.
The guys who are in the baby boomer generation, that's the way they went through their work career. It was on paper, right?
Right.
I think the key thing is teach, learn, show, right? If you show them, I have an iPad, right? And all the review and work you give to me, you can write once, send it back to me and track that which you've done, and show them how it's done. Teach them. Look, at the end of the day, I don't believe that anybody likes to sit or stay in ignorance, right? They have been very comfortable with paper and stationery because that's the only way they have known it. Not necessarily from a cost standpoint, they're not necessarily looking at it from a cost perspective, but they're not comfortable with any other method, right? They have been comfortable, or they would rather write physically with a pen on paper. But if you show them that there are new ways and methods of doing this, for example, show them an iPad and say, oh God, look, there's an iPad pencil, there's an iPad, whatever it is. You can actually do all your review on this electronic medium and send it back. And that largely takes away and you can speak to him around making the advantages of creating a green and sustainable environment, etc., etc.
Right.
But again, you have to teach. You have to show, teach, and I mean, I don't believe that there's any individual who does not want to learn. They may not take it immediately, you give it to them, but over time they would want to.
Oh, someone just asked, what is reverse mentoring?
So basically, reverse mentoring is where you actually would provide learnings to somebody who is who you call from the cadre below. So your subordinates can mentor you as a manager, and put you in in tune with, i.e., more current trends and things that are more up to date and all of that stuff.
Okay. So Abdul Rashid Babalola says, how does a Generation X invite a Generation Z to take up more tasks and give of their time?
Well, I think one of the key things out there is, look, understand what time he has, understand what that person in that generation holds as value, right? If for them, it's what inspires them. So for them, you find out that there are lots around building businesses, providing solutions, which are birthed on the back of some of the problems and challenges that they have, right? So you'll find out that some of them will build a logistics business because over time they've wanted to send parcels here and there, and they found out that there's really nobody who is able to do it, and they get a set of bikes, get some Okada riders, and they've built a logistics business, right? Some other people are moved by travel. They want to see the world. But then again, how is it you need to be able to provide an influence of what you are trying to do, or get them. You need to be able to let them see what it is you need them to get into. Taking up tasks on the back of what? Is it a job? Is it I often hear a lot of colleagues say the younger generation are very lazy, right? Stereotype. I know a lot of young generation individuals who are very hardworking, but also know some who are aloof. The reality is they may not be in the right space of work. They may just want to be a creative person where they sit all day and by night the ideas come to them and they write. So some of the times you may want to actually, if they are not suited for the environment where they are, then you either, one will show them what the big picture is, right? And if they do not fit into that, then you point them into areas where they can, thrive.
Great. Okay. I think that should answer that question. Surura says, in mentoring the Generation Z, how can a middle point be attained between indulgence and accommodating their peculiarities?
I'll be very honest with you. It's tough to find a middle point because for any generation, you start to see an amount of irritation come when I have to indulge. So at the end of the day, remember, all these generations gather to achieve one thing. It's what the organization is there for. If the organization is there to make money by selling these products, the objective is to sell the product. How we go about selling that product in whatever structure exists is how you go about selling it. So the organizational goals and objective tries to help and build where the boundaries for indulgence will come, right? And look, the workplace or where we call a job may not necessarily be for everybody. Some people may be entrepreneurs and will do their own thing and would, manage their own type work style. But if you have to work within an organization, there are guide rules, there are things which the organization stand for, there are objectives, that there are their values, right? And whatever generation we fit into, we first must respect the values to which the organization stand for, right? So once you understand what the boundaries of the organization are, that's where you can then determine how far you are willing to indulge in meeting what the corporate objective is.
Right. So it's all about what the organization is trying to achieve. Right.
Yes, pretty much.
Pretty much. Okay, I just see that we have lots of messages going on in the chat. And in fact, we have a very interesting question here from Ni Yusuf. He says, for anyone to thrive, different character attributes will be required. Has this been your experience? Religion, culture, and experiences shape the core values of members of a global team. What should one be aware of in managing a multi-generational global team that cuts across different religion, culture, experiences, and core values?
Okay, thank you for that. That's a reality, right? At the end of the day, what it is you see is there are companies today that have offices across different countries, different regions, right? And culture does matter. And if you go back to my first point, respect of an individual, respect of the things they stand for is important. So if I get into Rome, I behave like a Roman, right? It may not necessarily be your way of life, but within the period to which you are engaging with that person, right, you would have to respect what their values are, right? If you get into an environment where it is cultural, so I'll give an example. If a Japanese guy hands me his complimentary card, I should look at the card, look at the guy in the face, and acknowledge that, okay, I've seen what it is you give me. Some people today, I would take your complimentary card, snap it on with my card scanning tool, and I can hand you your card back and tell you, well, you can keep that so we build a sustainable environment. The reality is I've gotten the details. But for a man who is out of Japan, he finds it very rude that you return his card to him. Not that you even take the card and put it in his pocket. He finds it very rude that you take the card, you have not read the details of the card, and look at him back and acknowledge. So we have to understand some of those things, do a bit of knowledge about those different environments, and try to respect the individuals.
So it all boils down to respect. Um, Dr. Atinuke says, thank you for the presentation. Having been in leadership and human resource for health sector, this is very insightful analysis. I'm wondering though, possible emergence post-COVID that may bridge the last three and the first two groupings that will carry workforce through the next season. Please, can you research or can you speak more on this?
Okay, so I think speaking to health and some sectors, so you'll find out that some sectors um, have more workforce in the first two generations because of the transfer of knowledge. So again, if you imagine what our sector is, so typically you'll have had doctors who retire at 65 or at 60, but and judges who retire at maybe 70. But the reality is you're having to see that these people are staying long on, right? Because one, you're either not getting the sort of experience this experience or depth of practice as you have with such people. It is you get more experience as you go on, right? So yes, there's cutting edge, but there's also a lot of experiential. So as a doctor or as a surgeon, if I've cut people 20 times more than somebody who has just cut for the first time, I'll put my belly under the person who has done it 20 times, right? So a lot of times there would be a need to do a lot of engagement across generations where you are building a lot more capacity down the line. And as experience happens, we're able to allow people in the older generations go into retirement, and their experiences can be passed on. So there's a lot of handhold or handshake across generations that need to happen.
All right, thank you.
Deliberate, actually, deliberate intergenerational handhold.
Okay. So, in response to one of your answers to one question, Tunde Popola says that he observes that some younger generation employees don't take initiative and just perform jobs to meet the basic requirements or outcomes. They don't explore more options or be more creative to get results or better outcomes. Like, is this his own stereotype?
So Tunde, I feel your sentiments, but the reality is, again, as with every generations, let's break what the stereotype is. Take an individual for his merits. Look, there are people who are fantastic at the jobs you give them to do, right? They are 22 years old, they take on initiatives and do exemplary well. And yes, there are people who fit the profile to which you described. Some of the things as leaders that we need to be able to do is find methods to stimulate those people who don't do what the other people do. What are the things that excite them? So some people have taken jobs not because it's what they really want to do, but it's because, oh, look, I've looked for a job for the past 3 years and I haven't found anything, so I'm just going to do this, right? But we must try to always bring out the best of every individual, find what their inner strengths are, hone and harness them. And of course, once we take the view on a bet on people, then you'll find out that you most likely will get the best of them.
Okay. Well, that was an interesting one. So someone is saying that, what advice would you give an employee whose line manager will always give responsibilities of others? So I'm guessing it's meaning like other employees.
So again, I think one of the things that that person or understand the reason that happens, right? So it's either that the employee that he's given that task to all the time is somebody who is either comfortable with or is largely reliable. But as managers, everybody who reports to us are ultimately our responsibility. So their development is our responsibility. The ability to get the best of them is also our responsibility. One of the so it's important that we as managers or those who manage teams, you engage all your staff. So if a staff is there and does not help you deliver what your corporate objective is, then you may want to look inwards and find either you find something that brings the best of that individual, or you let the person out of the organization. People would do what they do or do such things in that example because they have found that person to be somewhat reliable, right? They know that if they give them that task, they can probably go to bed. But it's also our responsibility as individuals to step up to the occasion. Let's not see a job as something that I just take, I get there at 8, whatever they give me today, I mark it and I'm out of there. Think about what your involvement and impact is to the organization over the time. What do you want to be remembered there for? How do you want to be seen when you leave? Do you want to be a participant in there, or you want to be somebody who has created?
Right.
So it's our job as managers to help build, and it's also our job as individuals to want to be part of that.
So what you're telling this attendee is that they should be happy that their boss is giving them more responsibilities.
If they get the jobs, I mean, it means there's something which they see. They obviously respect the output of their job.
Right. Right. So there's this other question that says, I work really long hours, mostly because the office culture encourages it. How do I propose to my boss to make my working hours more flexible? And it's actually a question that someone else has asked. So please, let's respond to this question.
Okay, so one of the things about working long hours. So are you working long hours because there's work to be done, or you are working long hours because you are, filling in the gap? There's no work to do, but my boss is in the office, and as such, I cannot get up. One of the things that we have to be, if you're a task-oriented or objective-driven organization, one of the things you have to be able to say, and with respect, is go to your boss and say to him, I'm done with my tasks and activities for the day. Is there anything else you would like for me to go, because I want to leave, right? There's no value to you as an individual, or to even him, if you are sat in the office and not doing anything. For all you care, that boss may just be waiting out traffic, right? So it is best to understand and not assume that he only just wants you there, right? So if you are done with your task for the day, I would say it's best you engage him, say, I'm done. You asked me to do these 10 things. I've done them. I would like to leave. Because again, if you have a 9 to 5 contract, you're okay to leave at 5, right? So if you have completed your task for the day at 5, then you can stand up and leave and tell him, I'm leaving and this is the reason I'm leaving, right? I see you're here. Is there anything else you want delivered? Maybe you have a meeting or whatever it is. But if there's a reason why he's there and he needs you to be there, then it's work. You give it.
All right, thank you. So we have three more questions, and I've noticed that we have run out of time. So I'd like your permission, sir, to do we go ahead with these questions or do we respond to them privately after the
Let's
webinar?
take them. Well, I think we have just a few.
Thank you very much, sir. So Olawi says, what's your optimum percentage of blend of the different generations? Like, what do you recommend for a typical organization?
Well, I guess there's no real recommendation. I think it's a function of where it is the sector to which they play. You'll see tech guys will largely hire a lot of generation Z and Y versus a multi generation environment. But I think it's a function of where it is you play and what it is your organization sets to achieve. There are certain job types that require people to be very active and on the road and all of that stuff, and may not necessarily meet a diverse group of generations. So it depends on what it is your organization wants to. I mean, experience is very important. So it would also be good to have people who have done this for many years at levels of leadership as they go up. But again, it's a function of what you have your organization trying to lead.
An anonymous attendee says, although this might sound like a stereotype, but a lot of individuals in Generation Z lack emotional intelligence. So, how can the baby bloomers help this generation?
Like I said, it's our responsibility as leaders to help see. The reason they lack emotional intelligence, remember I said they are the guys who are about candor. They would tell you what it is they feel, the way they feel.
Right.
But if we teach people the importance of emotional intelligence, and if you help them see respect first, then of course they would learn that it's important for me to respect this individual first and be mindful of his emotions and be kind. If we put kindness as the first thing, as we need to do in front of everything in any organization, you'll find out that once I think being kind to this individual, then I'll largely start to put in a lot of emotional intelligence at play. But it's our jobs as those in charge of them to show them the reason why it's important and guide them.
Right. So, final question for today. Akianima Sham says, how can you help speak to the issue of disruption in the workplace across generations, as disruption is the order of the day currently?
So that is actually going to be the way of life. The key thing is, as we, most of us in many generations are either stuck in the way we do certain things. If we do not learn or understand how disruption affects us, right, then we will be those who will be left out, right? So we need to very quickly cue on and key on into how disruption affects me, my work, and what it is I do, and ensure that I build and harness more knowledge and things to keep me relevant in the workforce going forward, right? The reality is disruption is going to affect everybody. The next question is, how do I remain relevant? And it affects everybody.
Right. So, regardless of your generation, this is something that we should keep in mind.
You have to keep that in mind.
Great. So, thank you very much, Mr. Olakunle Onayiga. You have been excellent at this presentation and you've given us some very helpful tips. And You've answered about 15 questions. We have more, but unfortunately, we are sorry we cannot take any more questions at this time. Thank you, everyone, for spending your time with us. Before you go, would like to find out from you what other topics you want us to treat in our future webinars. So please um, just take a few minutes to type that in the chat box. Let us know what other topics we should take in our future webinars. So once we do that, we will close for today. And we'll also be sharing the slides because I have seen some private messages asking about that. So no worries at all. We'll be sharing the slides with you after the presentation. Okay, is there? Okay, Toby says best ways to provide constructive feedback the workplace. Okay, thank you very much, Toby. So that's something that we would look forward to talking about in our future webinars. Any other suggestions? Okay, since we do not have any more, we'd like to thank you once again, Mr. Olakunle Onayiga. We are very grateful for joining us, to you for joining us. Thank you all our attendees and everyone who has made it a date with us. Okay, Sandra says mentorship at the workplace, emotional intelligence at the workplace. Okay, we are taking note of all these. Right. Thank you very everyone once again. Have a lovely day and a productive week. Please stay safe and do take care. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Have a
you.
good day. Stay safe.
You too,
Goodbye.
sir. Bye.